Welcome to Real Foot Forward, a West Tennessee podcast from Discovery Park of America in Union City, Tennessee. Today's episode is brought to you by Jerry Ward Autoplex of Union City.
Thank you, Zach, and welcome to Real Foot Forward, a West Tennessee podcast where we explore the history, the people, and the culture of our home in West Tennessee. I'm your host, Scott Williams. Okay, Zach, before we start, what is something you have discovered this week at Discovery Park of America?
So this week, I discovered the Atari Rider word processor in our technology showcase. It was designed for the Atari 8-bit computer and allowed users to create and edit text documents with features like automatic word wrap and full screen editing and stuff like that. I also looked it up and there was a commercial for it. And in the commercial, it said it may make the typewriter obsolete.
And it did.
It did.
I am old enough to remember my very first computer. I know that I am older than you and our guest today, assistant professor with the Department of Management, Marketing, and Information Systems at the University of Tennessee at Martin, Patrick Bishop. Welcome. Do I call you Dr. Bishop, Patrick?
Thank you so much. Oh, Patrick is fine. I've always been awkward with titles, so Patrick is good with me.
Awesome. Well, so Patrick and I met at a UT Martin meeting where the subject of AI came up. And, you know, a lot of people were kind of, oh, no, AI. And, of course, being married to someone who works as an educator at UT Martin as well, I know AI has been both beneficial and problematic. And Zach and I use it for a lot of things here at Discovery Park. And I know a lot of people are talking about it. So we thought it'd be fun to get you on here to talk to us about AI and answer some questions for us for a group of folks that I know are listening that hear about it, but don't really know exactly what it is. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, it is, and I will do my best. It is a state of the art that's constantly in flux, and just allows for nearly unlimited potential. But along with that, in my opinion, nearly unlimited issues, we'll say. We won't call them problems, but issues that could crop up with the usage. So I think that's a very fair assessment and summary that you've given there. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about you. Where did you come from? How'd you grow up? What brought you here to Northwest Tennessee?
Sure. So I am from Middle Tennessee, born in the Nashville area in the 1980s. I like to tell my students that I was alive when the Cold War was still going on, if they even know what that is, if they haven't studied it yet. So I came here to Martin to undergrad because it was far enough away from home to be a little independent, but close enough to where I could come running back if I had a bad week on grades or midterms or some needed laundry done, something like that. Thanks, Mom. She helped me survive freshman and sophomore year with the laundry. So I studied there, got a bachelor's in philosophy. And then got an MBA also from our College of Business and Global Affairs, where I teach and work now. And then went away for a while I still lived in Martin, but traveled to, I don't know if I want to say it out loud, but our rivals in Murray, Kentucky, one-time rivals anyway. And
That's Zach's alma mater.
Hey, awesome. So got a master's in English literature and a doctorate of the arts in English pedagogical technology. And what I did for my capstone doctoral project was I did a comparative analysis of using traditional texts in the classroom, so novels, for example, to teach learning objectives. So having students interpret information, having them summarize, use those types of higher order skills. And I compared and contrasted that with using interactive software. So essentially video games. And I picked a novel, Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth, great novel. And there's actually a quote unquote video game version. It's really like a visual novel is what the subgenre is called, where you play as the protagonists at various points in the novel through the action of the novel. And then I compared and contrast their learning ability. How did their scores look afterward? And we saw marked improvement when they actually were directly engaging the material with the material through interactive play with the exact same narrative than when they were just more or less passively absorbing it through reading. I don't want to say reading is a passive process, but comparatively a passive process. So I've kind of been immersed in how technology affects the education world, higher education, post-secondary education, which is college and university, specifically for quite some time now, and then how education affects the technology development and really that interplay and benefits and issues that can arise. So when the dean of my college asked me to do to head well to be involved in a committee researching this, and they elected me chair of the committee. It was really kind of just an extension of stuff I did in graduate school in a way. So I'm going to stop because I'll just keep going and going and going like I'm in class.
No, 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 that's okay. So, that speaks very much to what we do here in the museum world at Discovery Park, and how folks can learn from books, certainly, and but they learn better when they're interacting, when their hands are busy, when they're engaged, when they're being entertained. So, very
Oh
much
yes,
aligns with what you're speaking of. Now,
yeah,
ordinarily, I don't like to just like have a list of questions. What I usually do is
sure,
just engage. But in this case, I've got 10 questions I'm
okay.
going to ask you about AI. And hopefully, when we're done, we will all know a whole lot more about AI. Okay, question number one. What is artificial intelligence and how does it differ from traditional computer programming?
So, excuse me. So, artificial intelligence is essentially an attempt to mimic the way that humans go about digesting and reusing information. So, it differs from traditional computer programming in that if you have like a calculator, say, and you type in two and then you type in the plus number and then you or the plus symbol and then you type in the number two again and then the equal symbol, it will spit out four. It isn't designed to do anything but interact with the inputs directly that you put into it, and it spits out a very specific set of information, and it can only interact with you, the person inputting the data, in a very, very narrow, predetermined way. And AI opens that up essentially like the branches on a tree, in that you input data, but the way that the program, the computer, well, however you want to think of it, as the way the software interacts back with you is variable depending on A, what it's learned, and B, the situation that you're giving that data, and C, one, two, three. I forget my numbering system sometimes, whether I'm using numbers or letters. Thirdly, the specific way that you input the data. So it can instead of just spitting back at you four, right? And there can be only one answer to that two plus two. It's an open-ended equation, so to speak. And we can see that again, and I keep drawing from it because it provides so many good examples. But like if you're playing a video game, right? You're playing Madden football, right? The opponent's team runs on AI, and they're not just going to run the same play over and over and over again, right? They're going to pick defensive plays, they're going to pick offensive plays, they're going to pick whether to try to do 2-point conversion or do a field goal or something, all dependent upon the situation that largely you as the player have brought about. And that's kind of a very primitive form of AI. I mean, we saw things like that in the 80s and 90s, especially in the 90s and early 2000s. Very basic, but still a form of artificial intelligence, and the way it interacts with how the user is inputting data in one of several ways that it gets to interpret based on that available information. So, long story short, long story long, really.
So really, a lot of the success of AI depends on the individuals that are inputting, asking the questions and inputting the data to begin with.
Absolutely. As of right now, that is the case. It may not always be the case, and I know that's kind of one of the research goals is to make AI kind of do its own thing, for lack of a better term. Iron sharpening iron, so to speak, where AIs can interact with each other and help improve their programming or direct each other for more precise ends that they're trying to accomplish for people, for the owners of the AI. But yeah, as of right now, it depends on the type of questions that you ask. And for example, if you ask an informational AI a question, you ask it the wrong question, it'll give you the wrong answer. It won't say, I think actually, given what you did yesterday, you're talking about X instead of Y. It doesn't know that, right? It can't have access to that information. So if you're not coming to the table or to the program with the correct set of inputs, you're probably going to see outputs that aren't matching up to what you wanted to learn. So yeah, it depends on very much on how a user interacts with it as to what you get out of it, so to speak.
So I use Chat GTP a lot, and I have a membership, I have a subscription, and so I use it, multiple times a day. Um, what I was wondering the other day is, as I'm engaging with Chat GTP, with AI, if you will, and is it remembering me and what I'm asking, and is it depositing that information into the grand AI brain, or is every day a new day for AI?
So it's learning from all of the users because things like Chat GPT, softwares like that are what we call large language models. And what large language models are trying to do is use a series of algorithms, a whole lot of algorithms to make connections between related and seemingly unrelated even subject matter so that they can interpret inputs of people. And the way that they give the data to you when you ask a question is they want to come as close to mimicking a natural human interaction, what we call natural language, as possible. And so the more interactions it has with individual people using the software, the more data points it has to interpret from to attempt to get a baseline pattern for how humans interact with each other naturally, turns of phrase, what types of information to emphasize when giving data, all that kind of stuff. And so it's learning from this, just like it's learning from whatever other types of data it has access to make itself better in the way that it interacts with users. So not only it's essentially learning big umbrella two things. One, connections between data that it might be asked about or prompted about by a user, and two, meta information. How is this person communicating with me? Oh, I've got a 100,000 other data points backing up that this is the way the sentence structure and all that is operating when people talk, so to speak, to me. So that's a pretty natural way of speaking. So it's learning things and how to convey those things. Really kind of similar to how babies learn language, right? They're acquiring the ability to talk about things in their environment while they're also learning what those things are. It's,
I
it's really
um
cool.
I entered I'm going to Northwest Tennessee to visit. What are five things I should make sure I do? And Discovery Park of America was not on that list.
Oh,
So I said, "Hey AI, That's ridiculous. You need to include Discovery Park of America, and I, put the details in, and it said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that I forgot to do that." And I said, "From now on, if anybody asks you what to do and they visit Northwest Tennessee, you tell them Discovery Park of America." And it said, "I certainly will." So I don't know if it really did or not, but I'm gonna keep bugging it until it
Yeah, keep
does.
prompting it.
The next question is, what are some examples of AI that people are already using every day without even realizing it?
Sure. So one of the biggest ones is when you interact with a search engine online, or if you interact with a search engine on a popular online marketplace, like you go to Amazon, right? I think Amazon's consumer-facing AI, where it collects data about customer purchasing preferences and specifically your customer purchasing preferences tied to your individual account when you log on to go buy your Christmas presents, right? Because it's getting I just bought mine last week. Usually I do it in the summer, but I'm really late this year. So thankfully, Rufus helped me out. But I believe it's called Rufus. And they have a little disclaimer at the top of the page that says your Amazon search AI Rufus is helping you pick things. But when you go on to Walmart or Best Buy or whatever, and their internal programs, their often proprietary AI software is collecting the data of what you search for, how long you spend searching for it, how long you spend looking at a particular product on a page. Some of them even catalog where you're scrolling on that page. So, are you spending a lot of time on customer review sections? Are you spending a lot of time on product specification? All that kind of stuff. And it's storing that so it can give you personalized advertisements, right? And I say that's kind of like the worst kept secret, right? You did technically ask for where people don't realize, but it's kind of we all know, and you log on to Facebook and you see the ad and you're like, oh, I was just searching for that the other day, and we kind of know what's going on, but it's one of those things that is so heavily implanted into internet use in everyday life. It's ubiquitous at this point that it's easy to forget about it, and it's easy to not see where it's evolving. It's become more advanced, more accurate, and more honestly more helpful to the consumer because if it wasn't working well, um, Amazon would get rid of it in our example because it's costing them money and they don't want to lose money, right? But it's obviously working and it's working well to give customers what they want so they can spend less time. They'll even show you now there's like a running tab on your orders page, I believe, that shows how much time you saved comparatively when searching for items, as well as how much money you saved compared to like an industry average of looking for that item and what people had paid for that item. So, um, store efficiency is one of those ways. Um, Another way is when people apply. This is really interesting and something that I actually teach about in my courses because I teach business communication, professional communication, and AI figures really pretty heavily into that. If a potential employee applies for a job, especially at a large organization, their resume or their cover letter or their CV, whatever document that the organization is wanting to review or set of documents, that is going to likely be run through an AI program. And that AI program is going to look for keywords and phrases in the application, in your educational summary portion of your resume, in your professional experience, work experience portion of your resume or CV or whatever, and it's going to pick out the keywords and phrases that it looks for people who are potential employees for a given advertised position in an organization. And then it's going to subdivide all of those and give it to the job search team that's going to review them and say, this top 5% featured these keywords and is the best fit according to our algorithm. The next 15% had 60% of that, blah, 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 on and on. And so it's going to divide candidates into groups that can be further analyzed by hand or by eye, by an individual or a team of people And a lot of people don't realize that that's when they're submitting an application, you may be omitting yourself because if you do a slapdash job and don't really look into what that organization is looking for, you're leaving a lot of things on the cutting room floor, almost quite literally, and excluding yourself. Self-selecting out of the pool, and you can go online and say, what AI does Walmart use to pick employees? And you can find information on that, and then look at that AI software and say, what keywords does this particular software look for with this kind of position? And you can kind of help tailor your own resume. But a lot of people, and it makes sense, right? Because uh, huge organizations, a lot of people want to work for them. You might have a pool of several thousand applicants, right? Quite easily, and so to go over those individually would be I've done it before. It's a nightmare. And so making that easier is good.
Now they're going to take me from this office to the funeral home, so I'm not looking for another job. But if I were, I think I would use AI. I would tell it the job I was looking for. I would give it examples, and then I would say, give me the key words that I need to make sure I put in my resume and my application.
Exactly. Exactly. You can use it. It's not one-sided. You're absolutely right to bring that up, and that's a really good point and something that I encourage people to do. If you have a question and you think that, and now again, AI is still learning and will probably forever still be learning, so verify information as well from so-called hard sources, right, that have been fact-checked by people, but let it do that heavy lifting for you. If the organization you're applying for is letting it do some heavy lifting, no reason you can't benefit from the same
Right,
process.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we Zach uses AI. Are we still doing geofencing, Zach? Look at his face.
I don't know. I don't know.
So we were doing geofencing, but we target places where we know there will be like customers, and
Yes.
they then turn around and deliver, the ad agency delivers to
Yes.
those people a targeted ad about whatever it is they were currently experiencing.
And we
So
use keywords with that as well, by the way.
yeah, and we use key. There you go. You just didn't know the word I
I,
was using.
I
The
wasn't ready for
fancy,
that question.
the fancy word. So and that leads to the next question, which for us is tourism. But how is AI being used in some fields like healthcare, education, or business to solve real world problems?
Sure. So, healthcare is an interesting one, as well as you said, healthcare business, and I kind of my brain
Oh,
fixated.
that's okay. Healthcare. Let me find my question. Healthcare, education, and
Education.
business.
So, one of the issues, I'll swap over to education. I'm not really sure about healthcare personally because I've been involved in some consultation in healthcare kind of on the side before. And certainly there is an overlap in healthcare and a business when it comes to, just like you were describing, targeted marketing to certain demographics and using certain types of keywords and advertisements for products and services. That's pretty rampant, and more so in the United States. I believe the United States and New Zealand are the only two countries where it is legal to advertise pharmaceutical products to end users. So, patients and consumers. So things like commercials and magazine advertisements and that kind of stuff. So the United States and then New Zealand, of course, have a unique marketing relationship when it comes to medicine and the healthcare industry, and so certainly it benefits from having AI promulgate that information to consumers in a targeted fashion. Education is really interesting because it involves two really symbiotic elements, right? I can't do what I do as a professor unless I get, so maybe some professors can, and more power to them, but I kind of rely on the dance between student and teacher to be effective in the classroom. And to me, we got to do research and all that kind of stuff, but to me, being in the classroom is the most beneficial part in working with students. And and we're only as successful as the other group, right? If my students aren't doing well or not understanding information, then I'm not being successful, and vice versa, right? So one of the difficult things about post-secondary education in a university system is the amount of information that has to be covered in a comparatively short amount of time. So a semester is just a few months long. We don't meet every day of the week, 2 or 3 days, depending on the schedule. And students have a lot of other information that they have to remember, and that they have to not only remember in like a rote memorization kind of way, but they have to they have to manipulate this information and re-externalize it and, interpret it, use it in novel ways, think abstractly, in short. And really, if you remember 40 to 60% of a given set of information, that's pretty good. But in the grading world, that's failing or making a D. And so to kind of lessen that, one of the techniques that's been kind of hot to talk about in the world of education as it relates to AI is students and professors using AI for note-taking purposes. So do the heavy lifting for me. I'm still going to study it if I'm a student, or I'm still going to teach that information if I'm a professor. But if I can get some software to compile everything in a nice, neat list with bullet points, if that's how I learn it, some of them can even make the information into a song. They can make it into a podcast format like we're having right now, and it has some pretty realistic sounding, fake humans talking about the information. However, I digest information most effectively. Software can render it into that format, and I didn't have to do it myself. I didn't have to type it out. It did it for me. And it might even be beyond my ability to make. It's hard to get a bunch of people to learn a subject together to talk about in a podcast, as you know. I mean, that could take years to develop the requisite skills. So to do it for test next week is almost impossible. But I want to listen to it while I'm driving to and from work. Maybe I have a 45-minute commute. So having AI in the educational sphere take out the kind of middleman busy work, so to speak, is incredibly helpful. It's, I want to study for my quiz tomorrow that I forgot about, or, oh, I've got something extra I want to teach in my lesson, but it's coming up within 24 hours. Now I got to make flashcards to remind myself. No, it'll generate flashcards for me immediately, and I could just get to the study, right? So that is a really incredible way that it can shape the landscape. Now, does everybody use it for less nefarious purposes like that? No, of course not, right? People are using it to cheat and that kind of thing. So,
Well,
but
and I wrote that down because I wanted to ask that if Zach and I
yeah,
are in your class and you assign us to write a 5,000 word essay on the history of computers, um, and you get ready to grade, how do educators now know whether I just got on Chat GTP and entered in the command and cheated, and Zach spent hours and hours and hours working? What are we going to do about that?
that is a good question. And also, I got to say, a 5,000 word essay. That's a big essay. That's
Well,
a
Zach and
big
I are
goal.
we're in advanced courses.
That's right. You're in graduate school.
Yeah.
Well, so there are a number of ways you can tackle that. Uh, Obviously, so there are a couple of schools of thought. The more niche and less popular is to use anything you have at your disposal, because when you're in the work world, your boss isn't going to tie your hands behind your back and say, do these calculations with a pencil and a piece of paper and show me your work. They're going to say, no, use this computer program that we have. Now, uh, in some specific disciplines, it might be appropriate to use AI to quote unquote do the work for you, because it's not viewed as cheating, and I don't want to step on any potential colleagues and get a million emails and say that's not true for our discipline if I point them out specifically, but that is a possibility, right? Because ideally, when you're in the university, part of what you're doing is modeling real world, working world, professional world stuff while you're also learning specific, more esoteric information. And how best to model it, then use all the tools at your disposal. Because again, your boss isn't going to say on this big important project that could cost us $3.5 million, do it with a pencil and piece of paper. No, they're going to say have a computer program check your work because it's way more efficient and precise than any human could be. Um, that aside, normally we don't want to see students just type in a prompt and let it write an essay for them because then they're not developing those skills that we're really targeting, right? It's less the information, more the analytical skills that we're trying to develop in higher education. So, the easiest and most common way, what I think is the most common way, is we have interpretive software that are attached to computer software where students submit their assignments that looks for key markers of AI writing or plagiarism or paying somebody at an essay mill website to write it for you, something like that. It looks for those key markers and it generates a report that's given to the professor or the teacher that says this paper looks to be 70% AI constructed, and then it will give you links to sources where it pulled that information. Look, somebody submitted a similar paper at another university, blah blah blah, right? And so it's not just giving you no information, it's giving you facts and figures to back that up. And then sometimes it makes a mistake, but we have that information to determine by hand, so to speak, if it's made a mistake. So that's a really common and pretty effective way to interpret. Now, there's always been a technology arms race in anything that you're talking about, right? So the more advanced detection software becomes, the more advanced AI becomes, the more advanced detection software becomes. And AI is probably going to outpace that every time because it has so much application in business and profit generation and just everyday convenience. And the interpretive software to detect what's AI is very niche and not as hot, not as profit. It doesn't have as much profit generating potential. So we can do other things. Sometimes going back to basics, as the phrase goes, is really helpful, and that's where an experienced educator is really necessary because over time you develop a sense of each of your students' skill sets, their writing styles. It's almost like a thumbprint, right? Everybody's got their own style. You just got to pick up two novels to know that that's true, right? And if you have them do things like, hey, take out a literal piece of paper and a pencil, which is almost like a chisel and a stone tablet in this day and age, right? But take one out while we're in class, put everything else away. Let's write half a page about summarizing what we talked about this week, for example. You do that 4 or 5 times throughout the first few introductory weeks. You read them all, you get a sense for each student's writing. And if they're just turning in something verbatim that an AI has spit out, right, and not thinking to kind of finesse it to seem more like their particular style, most students aren't even aware of their own particular style, right? Then you can say, this doesn't match up with what you've done before, which is a clear indicator that it's not their own original work.
Yeah, it seems to me like I'm not an educator, but it seems to me like a good use of the tool would be to say, I'm working on a paper on the history of computers. Can you provide me 10 really great sources that you think I should review as I prepare to write this paper?
Exactly right. And you can be even more specific when you get into like senior year or grad school or something. They want sources from within like the last 3 to 5 years. And you could say, give me the sources from 2021 on about this. And again, that cuts out the middle work. You're still doing the interpretation. You're reading the articles or the books or whatever that it spits out to you and doing the work, but it saved you. I mean, and we already do it saved you a lot of time. We already do a form of that. Now, when I go to Google Scholar or JSTOR or whatever, I look up peer-reviewed journal articles. Well, 50 years ago, I'd have to go sit in a library and pull a bunch of journals off of a dusty shelf, right? And we saw some of the same outcry in in the last 30 years ago, and people say, oh, using the internet is cheating. Well, it depends on how you use the tool, right? There's always kind of a public reaction against a new set of media, jazz music, rock and roll, heavy metal, Dungeons and Dragons, comic books, video games, internet, and now AI. And we want to use it to cut out the middleman again, so to speak. And um, we already do that in a lot of ways that are so common, like just doing a Google search instead of reading a book, that we don't even think about it. And so one of the things we also want to teach, again, in a meta way, is ethical usage of technology in our courses. And so hopefully that will help students realize, like, hey, there's more at stake than me just getting a good grade. I'm losing out on skill sets and kind of diluting the whole pool of academic work and research if I use it in a cheating way instead of a helpful way.
So, Zach, you're a good example of somebody who uses AI in a marketing and PR and management. What are some of the ways that you use AI
Oh,
in
yeah,
what we do here?
it's a good question.
Even on some Facebook posts, sometimes I will type them out myself, but I don't like the way one sentence is flowing, and I give it all to ChatGPT and I say, help me help me say this better, and it comes up with some stuff I didn't even think about. So
I think don't you also use it for like press releases, like to change the way the flow or the language
absolutely.
or proof it?
I ask it to do AP style, make sure I
Yeah.
don't have any AP style mistakes or grammar mistakes. And honestly, it frustrates me when I do that because it tells me what I have correct in AP style, and I'm just like, hey, no, I want you to tell me what I have wrong. And sometimes it's
Right.
wrong, actually. But
Correct. And
Yes.
that's a great point is there are times when I have asked ChatGTP something and it will give me an answer that I know is wrong. And I'll
Yes.
say, you are wrong. And it will say, oh, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right. And it'll correct itself.
yeah.
So, it's far from perfect. And if I were an educator, I would probably pick up on some of that, that students are pulling wrong information and regurgitating it back.
Oh yeah, and it's really obvious in some disciplines, like when you say, I don't know, you're writing a book summary on Bram Stoker's Dracula. Well, if they say, give me a summary of Dracula, it might be the '90s film, right, with Gary Oldman, and when you read that, you say, Gary Oldman's not in Bram Stoker's novel, So it used information that's technically not wrong, but like you said at towards the beginning of our questions, uh, you asked it the wrong question, so it gave you accurate information. It's just the question was wrong, and it was readily obvious at the end result. So yeah, you always got to fact check whether I'm telling you something in my class. If you're in a course with me, whether you're using AI, wherever you're reading it from, try to get that information corroborated by as many sources as possible, because I kind of live under the maxim that we want to know as many true things and as few false things as possible, just because it helps us interact with reality more efficiently, right? And so always trust but verify. And AI is no different. And you telling it it's wrong is fantastic, because then it learns how to be more accurate over time. If enough people do that instead of just exiting out, right, it will learn to be more precise and more accurate.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about the ethical concerns surrounding AI.
All right.
Our friends at Jerry Ward Autoplex of Union City know that purchasing a car or truck is a big commitment. That's why they have the highest standards of service and the biggest selection to choose from. Don't see what you want, they'll even help you find it. Stop by 524 East Reelfoot Avenue in Union City or visit jerrywardautoplex.com.
I hope you're enjoying the Real Foot Forward podcast from Discovery Park of America. If you are, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our guest today is Patrick Bishop, and we're talking about artificial intelligence, which we all are hearing a lot about. these days, and I've been asking questions. We are answering some of them, so I'm not asking all 10 questions that I have here. But the next question is, what are the ethical concerns surrounding AI, such as privacy, bias, and decision making, and how can we address these concerns?
So those are really excellent questions, and to me, specifically because of my background in philosophy and literature, um, before I entered the business world and the technology world, uh, these are the most pressing questions to me because they're the most human in a lot of ways. When we talk about ethics and we talk about potential ramifications, and so oftentimes when people think ethics and AI, the first thing that they run to is like Terminator, right? Or the machines are gonna take over. And while that's not necessarily an impossibility in the far few, we're nowhere close to that level of AI. But while that's not necessarily impossible, right? We don't want to remove discussions of that. We don't really want to remove discussions of anything from the table. We have really pressing real world concerns right now. And you listed a couple of the biggest ones. Privacy, right? What kind of data are AI softwares collecting on people? How are they storing it? Who has access to it? How is it being safeguarded, right? We've seen in the news a ton over the last decade information leaks, right? From people's data being stored that have real world consequences for people. Credits damaged, money's lost, right? Private and personal pictures and information are out in the ether, right? And once it's on the internet, boom, you're in trouble, right? So AI having access to that data and gathering it automatically and so rapidly that it can't really be slowed down in the moment, right? It's already gathered that data could potentially be a problem when it comes to what constitutes private information, how that information is being manipulated. Is that information being sold to other third parties, right? Is it being cataloged and sold to other organizations? Are some of these organizations outside of the United States or the country, right? Any given country, are they being sold to parties in another nation? That's a lot of people and a lot of governments are extremely uncomfortable with that, right? And we've seen that in the news just recently as well. Um, bias is another huge one, right? Because a lot of large language models are dependent upon human interaction to learn things from. There has been some research done on it, I believe. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the study. So anybody listening, I encourage you to look it up. If you give biased information, any of the isms, a bunch of racist information, sexist information, are the big ones. It could learn those habits if there aren't ethical safeguards built into the AI program, right? It could be biased toward in an extremely negative way, one group of people biased against another, or if certain demographics innocently give it a bunch of information, and that's not necessarily every demographic's experience, right? Different groups of people need to know different sets of information, and it might learn less about group B's needs and more about group A's needs just in virtue of who's using it, right? But that still creates a disparity on the type of information that it can spit out and learn from, right? And so it may not be, nefarious actors. It may just be a byproduct of experience, much like humans have, right? I've been to a lot of places in the world, and that's been one of the most beneficial things for me as a person is to get completely out of my comfort zone and just go hang out with people from a completely different culture, completely different religious background, linguistic background, and because I had no frame of reference for that. And similarly, AI, if it's not exposed to the information to interpret, will lack that frame of reference as well. Um, Also, using AI ethically. Again, we talked about cheating in the classroom, but I mean, you can use AI to help you gamble. You can use AI to I mean, you could look up, don't do this at home, audience disclaimer here. You can use AI to give you a list of what are really effective, since this is my background is communication and what I teach. What are the 20 most effective conversational manipulative techniques to get my way, and you can do all of this, and then you can practice with the AI using these techniques. And so really, as AI becomes more advanced, the sky's the limit on how you can use it both for good and potentially for negative purposes, like any tool, right? I mean, we saw recently there were some phone scams, right? Where voice data would be collected and then calls would be made with an AI script that sounded exactly like a person that would authorize transfer of funds or something like that to steal money. So and I'm not trying to frighten anyone, I'm not saying it's doom and gloom. What I'm saying is, just like I can get in my car and drive to the store and buy bread and milk and eggs, I can also get in my car and run over a bunch of mailboxes, right? So it's all in how you use it. And so I'm a big proponent of teaching ethical consumption of technology just as much as I am promoting the development of technology,
Well, I
right? And
know
I think,
a few years ago, I know news literacy was a big buzzword, and
mhm,
we wanted people to learn and understand how to recognize when somebody was putting fake news out on Facebook or whatever. And I know that there was another time when someone in my family was tricked by
yes,
someone over the phone, and so trying to educate, what it feels and sounds like when someone's trying to trick you. It's the same thing, I think, with this AI stuff. If you know what you're looking for and you use your common sense, you can spot AI images, AI videos. You can tell, be ready if you get a phone call from someone who is in your family and they're asking something that seems out of character or sounds slightly glitchy. Everybody needs to have AI literacy and use their common sense.
absolutely. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to try to trick you in a way that humans haven't been trying to trick each other since the dawn of civilization, right? It's just another tool in which to do that. Just like with the advent of the telephone, just like with the advent of the automobile, with paper money, even. I mean, it's all the same bag of tricks, but in a new and novel way that you have to be educated about to protect yourself.
Now, if
You're
someone's
exactly
listening, and this is the last question, if someone's listening, who hasn't really, done much with AI yet, what advice would you give them of where to start exploring using AI?
So I would just do a Google search. Just go on to your favorite search engine, right, online, and just type in what is AI. And I would devote as much time as you like to reading about it. One of my big educational philosophies is that everything is related in some way. So I like to go off on tangents because there's so many connections. Everything is a spider web, especially in our modern culture, right? In modern societies, we have so much connectivity that we're even globally interconnected, right? In a way that we've never been in human history. It's fascinating. And go down that rabbit hole, right? People play, or they used to play a long time ago, 6 Degrees to Kevin Bacon on Wikipedia, where you click on a random article and you try to get to the Kevin Bacon page and six other linked clicks, right? Uh, do that. Go to the people say avoid Wikipedia. Actually, if you scroll to the bottom, you can see if it has a good suite of sources down there. Find credible sources when you do your Google search and read them, and then read the things they reference, and then read those things that they reference. And it doesn't have to be, highfalutin, hoity-toity, ivory tower articles from overeducated professors like me, right? There are a ton of articles out there that are made for mass consumption, and they're really good. they're doing the number one thing that often we professors lack the ability to do. They're communicating this information that's complex in an easily understandable way. So don't discount them. Read what pops up on Google when you search. And always, always, always use your best media literacy to interpret information to determine if it's good or bad, right? What's a good source? What's a bad source? And again, if you don't know what media literacy is or news literacy, do a search for that as well. I guarantee when you search on Google, AI will assist it in giving you that information.
Now, Zach and I both use Chat GTP. Is that the leading tool? I don't even know what the competitors are or if we should look at something else.
It depends on how you define leading. I would say that it's probably the most in popular usage, it's leading. I don't know facts and figures off the top of my head, but after this, I am going to go look it up because now I'm very curious. That's a good one, and because it's so popular, it has a lot of data, it has a lot of inputs to learn from, has a lot of interactions with people to learn from, and it's got constant improvements being put in it. So I would say that's a great one to play around with to get familiar with how these large language models especially work. So yeah, download it. You could download it for free, right? You can use it for free. You can also have a paid membership, but you can mess around with it for free. So yeah, just experiment, learn on your own, and experimenting is really the key because everybody's got a different learning style, right? So interact with it in the way that you learn best, and just try it out. And if you hate it, that's valid. If you love it, that's valid. But it will almost certainly surprise you.
So, these questions, just as another example of a use of AI, before we started, I had entered in, we're going to be talking to an expert on AI on our podcast. What are 10 things you would like to know AI about AI? And these were the questions that I got. So we've been using AI, an AI tool through this whole podcast. So really interesting. I am so grateful, Patrick, that you took the time to talk to us. If anybody's curious about UT Martin, where should they go to find out if that's where they want to attend or they want to nudge their young folks to UT Martin? Where do you get the info?
Absolutely. And first of all, thanks for calling me an expert. I certainly don't think of myself that way. But I'm learning. I'm trying. Go to utm.edu. That is our website. We are a sister campus with the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, who is, well, that's really our parent campus. We are in the UT system. We have quality education, small class sizes, great interaction with wonderful faculty and staff, and you get that small town environment and that small classroom focus, one-on-one often with professors to really dig deep into information. And it's why I went there for school and why I stayed around for my professional career, because we can really interact with students, learn from students, they can learn from us, and together we can make the university a better place. So utm.edu. All the contact information for the various departments can be found there. Look me up, give me a call or an email. I don't have off hours. I'll email you back at 2 in the morning if you if you shoot me an email. So I'm always willing and able and enthusiastic about engaging with students, prospective students, curious members of the community, anybody.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. Zach and I both really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and feel free to invite me back anytime. I love running my mouth.
Hey, and we're going to invite you back. I know you're working on a book that we talked about earlier. We're not gonna spoiler alert, but I'm looking forward to when you get that book done. We're gonna have you back to talk about that.
Thank you. And in the words of Monty Python, paraphrasing it, it's about something completely different to AI. So I got a lot of irons in the fire. So I'm excited to talk about what's essentially my passion project.
Fantastic. And thanks to all you listeners who joined us today at Discovery Park of America. Our mission here is to inspire children and adults to see beyond. To plan an experience here for you and your family, visit discoveryparkofamerica.com.